right into the Broadband Advisory Council meeting today. We have a ton of information to cover. Thank you all for joining. I'm going to flip to the next slide here real quick. I'm going to ask Hank if you would please turn the recording on for this meeting. Make sure everybody consents to that.
Yes.
Hank, are we good to go?
Yes, Jim.
Okay, perfect. Thank you. What I want to do first off is make sure, I'm just going to go through a quick roll call. If everybody would just say present, we'll make sure we get everybody noted for minutes and stuff. Anna, I can see you. Anna Berger? Good?
Here.
Okay, thank you. Bernie, I saw Bernie. Brad Wright, Brad present. Betsy Carpenter. Great. Eric Buds, I know Eric was here. Dr. Nelson, I saw Kathy Schwarting. I saw Lisa Aiken.
Yes.
Lori Dickus. Madeline, I saw Madeline. Melanie Barton, I know she's not able to attend. Mike Coker, I know was on. Mike Cowick was not able to join. Peggy McLean. Okay. Ray, I know Ray. Director Woods. Nope. Dr. Frazier from ETV. Susie, I saw Susie. I saw Vic Young. And I saw, how about Keller? Keller able to join? All right. So I think we've got our roll call accomplished. I'm going to be very quick and on the minutes. And I'm going to take apologies on this one. We do not have minutes for the previous meeting to approve today. We'll take those both up at the next meeting. That's one of the things we're going to take corrective action on. But I will say that the previous meeting was completely recorded. So anybody that may have missed it, you can jump online and get access to that. But we will have an official vote on both sets of minutes. And there was also a correction to the January minutes as well. I know that we had missed a couple of attendees, so I just want to touch on that point. So that's all we're going to do with the minutes for today. I'm going to dive in and I'm going to let Lynette jump in.
Well, most of our presentation or agenda today is just going to be updating you on some various topics. And I'm going to start with the legislative. So House Bill 4408 became effective May 13th. It does allocate or authorize for the broadband office $400 million for infrastructure. Now that is comprised of actually two sections of the American Rescue Plan Act. One section is the State Fiscal Recovery Fund, and that's about $214.2 million. Now the Capital Projects Fund, again under ARPA, but it's got its own provisions and requirements, is $185.8 million. Those funds are not released. They will not be released until a capital projects fund plan is approved by U.S. Treasury. And Jim's going to talk more about that later in the presentation, but those funds are not currently resident with us now, but we have the opportunity under a formula to obtain the 185.8 upon approval of a plan by U.S. Treasury. We are to use these funds again for infrastructure. This is actually getting access to households, businesses, communities in the state that are currently either unserved or underserved. We are going to be focusing on unserved. Jim, that's really in a nutshell where we are with the American Rescue Plan Act, and I'm going to turn it back to you.
Thank you so much. We'll come back to talking about Oh, I'm sorry. It was getting a little bit of echo on my mic. Apologies about that. Nanette, you might still be. Are you? There we go. That helps. Okay. So getting rid of the echo, going through our agenda, I want to tell you all about Digital Drive refresh. We have an awesome team in the broadband office. I really have to thank Mike and James. We're very short staffed with 3 full-time people doing a heavy load, but we're working with an amazing within an amazing agency too here at ORS, and a lot of people are contributing their brain power. But specific to SC Digital Drive, huge amount of work over the last couple months to get this finished. Maps for all 46 counties have been placed out there. You will notice that March 31st map set is now on SC Digital Drive. Both the static maps and all of the interactive tools have now been refreshed for the whole state. You've all seen the best available technology map before, which shows us where we have fiber, where we have cable. These pink areas are giving us a lot of heartburn. This is the places we do not have internet service provider, but that's been updated. Again, many of you have been through this before, but we look at the maps because they provide our backing for how we make investments from the broadband office. So again, the green areas are already served, and that's very important. The white areas are places where we have not identified any residential homes. And then we've made a little bit of a modification to the map. I'll draw this out for everybody, where this used to say housing density, and now it's actual housing units. We've made that clarification to the maps to make it a little bit easier for everybody. But when I show you the maps, many of you remember I say find the freckles, and that's how we can solve the state's problems, because the freckles are where we have the most homes, and that's where we need to target dollars most rapidly. As soon as we solve the freckles of the darkest color, then we move on to lighter shades, and that's how we get it done. Here's the areas of need map. Again, green is good, white nobody lives there, and then the freckles are the high need places. The planning map, the intent for this map is to help everybody understand places where we've already made investments. So the yellow are state investment areas, and the blue are federal investment areas. And we don't have direct control over the federal side of the equation. That's 2 agencies. That's the Federal Communications Commission and the U.S. Department of Agriculture are making those investments. But we obviously want to be aware of those so that we can avoid putting state money on top of places where there's already federal dollars. So we have careful coordination as we go through. This is the refreshed version. I'll spend a couple minutes on this to make sure everybody knows. These are our current statistics for the state of South Carolina. I say current as of March 31st, 2022. I'll walk you through just kind of how to read this slide, but the black section of the slide shows us our current statistics for the state. The green section of the slide shows us the places that we've made investments, and that's the projected investment impact. So when all this stuff is done, that's the change that we expect to occur. And down here, the blue at the very bottom, this is where we're projecting we will be, and you can see in this case on January 1st, 2023, we're projecting that the state will be in this blue zone. So looking at some things that'll draw your attention to, we currently have 181,715 homes in the state of South Carolina that do not have 25/3 access. This access bar, or set of statistics, shows the number of homes that currently have fiber, the number of homes that currently have cable, and the number of homes that currently have copper. If you add these 3 together, I will draw to your attention that it's greater than the number of homes in South Carolina. That's because some homes have access to copper and cable and fiber at the same time. So you can't add them together, but this does show you that the residents of South Carolina have access to those different technologies as you go. Adoption. This shows you how many residents have actually signed up for fiber service. So this is a new we can see 337,000 roughly homes have signed up for fiber. About 1.2 million have signed up for cable, and about 300,000 residents of South Carolina still subscribe to copper. So that's really interesting information. And finally, you see this, we call it ACP enrollment. We've added this statistic to the slide. This shows us the number of homes that have enrolled for the Affordable Connectivity Program from the FCC. These are the homes receiving $30 a month for their subsidy towards internet service. So we're going to keep track of this. This is a very important metric, and we're pushing all of our ISPs to be eligible to offer that. So you can see down here, I'm going to follow this public K-12 column. You can see as we currently are, there's roughly 50,000 students that do not have internet at home, and that keeps us all up at night. But when you go down here at the bottom, based on our investments, we think that we've connected a little over 6,100 homes, and we're projecting at the end of the year, we will have brought that number down to 44,000 plus or minus homes with K-12 students. It's still not good, but it's progress, and we're going to show you some more. But I did a little walkthrough on this slide. I want you all to understand how to read these slides. There's a set of slides for every single county, has them in the exact same format. And so you can pick a county and pull down those slides. And we also have the interactive tools where you can zoom in or zoom out on the data as you prefer. So hopefully that's helpful. Again, this is all SC Digital Drive update, and everything is out there for you to take a look at. So please visit and tell us what you think. I had an agenda item to talk about staffing. We finished June 30, 2022, our fiscal year end with 3 dedicated FTEs in the broadband office. You all know me, you know Mike Hirschberger and James Tannis. It's been the 3 of us, and gratefully with the support of the General Assembly and the governor, and especially in the net, we've been able to add new FTEs to the broadband team. We have a program coordinator. I'll introduce you all to her at a later date, but Emily started yesterday, and I'm incredibly grateful to have Emily on our team now. And we have 2 new GIS specialists are joining the team actually Monday next week. So our complement of staff is growing, and we're all really happy about that, because the mapping load that we're dealing with is extraordinary right now, but it's exciting. Talking about investments in our overall strategy and why the mapping is so important. You know, we just got done releasing we call it the March 22 map set, and we got to get that done before we can roll out an investment round. And then we're going to map the state again in September, and then we'll do another investment round and map it again and do another investment round. And this cycle makes us very accurate in terms of deploying resources, and it helps us to avoid wasting money too. So one of the things we definitely don't want to do is duplicate any kind of infrastructure builds in the state. And the more frequently we map, the better off we're going to be. And by the way, I'm not aware of any other state that's able to do mapping twice a year. It's an incredible lift, and we're extremely proud of it. But that's why we're doing it so much. So I'm gonna zoom in on this box right here, the 2022 box, and give you a look at how we see calendar year 2022 moving forward. And I want to tell you really look at 3 different grant programs within calendar year 2022. We're going to talk you through them, help you understand each one of them. They're designed to work together and complement one another, and they have very different purposes. So on April 20th, we opened up applications for the Last Mile Grant Program pilot, and we closed that on May 6th. The Last Mile program is designed to solve what we call donut areas, donut holes inside existing served areas. And we used a little bit of extra state money to fund that, about $1.3 million. I'll talk more about that in a minute. And you can see right after we got that done, or we got the applications in. House Bill 4408 passed. The governor signed that, and we're incredibly grateful for the support of the General Assembly making that happen. We got our maps done right ahead of June 30th, which is super important because we put together what we call a priority area grant program. That grant application window is now open. All of the documents are online, and the ISPs are going crazy. Right, Internet Service Provider is what ISP means. And then the grant window is officially open until August 31st. So we expect a lot of engineering work going on over the next few months. And then in Q4, we have this thing called the Accelerated Project Grant Program. And it's still part of ARPA, but we'll talk about that in a minute. I've got a couple of slides to share some more detail. First, on the Last Mile Grant Program, this is a very different program. I think a lot of you know, we have the I Need Internet survey where residents of South Carolina are raising their hand and telling us, I can't get internet at my house. And we've been aware for quite a while that even though an area might look green on the map, we know that there's a neighborhood that hasn't been connected, or there's a set of homes for whatever reason, these little donut holes. So we specifically targeted the Last Mile Grant Program at existing served areas and at the set of I Need Internet survey respondents. So when the ISPs applied for the grants, they had to pick a home where we already had a survey response. We awarded about $1.3 million and that will connect 569 residential homes. All of the construction needs to be complete by December 31st, but there's 6 different internet service providers, and I listed them out for you that are participating in this program. And it's really hard to do because we awarded this kind of at a street address level, but huge compliments to Mike and James, who had the heavy lift on working through all of this and making that happen. But that's what Last Mile is all about. Also in the legislation, House Bill 4408, ORS, the broadband team was allowed to allocate up to $25 million for what we call accelerated projects. So some of you know that ARPA went into effect at the federal level on March 15th of 2021. That's when it was signed by the federal government. And a number of our internet service providers have been building like crazy since that time, and we haven't been able to launch any grant program with the funding from the General Assembly because it hadn't been allocated. So this is an opportunity to help cover some eligible costs from the ISPs that have been moving from May 15, 2021 through June 30. I'm not going to spend a lot more time talking about this, but we have decided that we're going to award up to $25 million in the fourth quarter of this year to ISPs that have been building like crazy since ARPA first started. But they're, basically later in the year, they're going to give us complete financial documentation and, of course, operational status, engineering construction results. So now let's switch gears and talk about the priority program, which is a thing which grant applications are currently open for. So first thing to talk about is, what is a priority area? Well, baked into House Bill 4408, we were required by statute to look at 3 different conditions. And I'll start first by saying the South Carolina Department of Ed has been an amazing partner. And they provided us with really over 785,000 public school student addresses. We've been able to bake that into the maps to have very detailed, accurate information. I'll show you that in a minute. But we know the census blocks in South Carolina where no students have connectivity. That is one priority condition. Another priority condition is what are known as difficult development areas, and these are designated by U.S. Housing and Urban Development. Some of you are familiar with community development block grants. Those are very specific geographies where grants are awarded into high-need communities, and that's another criteria that we're now mapping. And of course, you remember the pink areas I showed back on the first map we were looking at. These are places in South Carolina where no internet service provider exists. So if any one of these three conditions are met, those create the priority areas in South Carolina. And we've announced that we will invest up to $180 million of our allocated ARPA funds into this priority area program. What's really cool about this from the ISP's perspective is typically an ISP will put together their project plan, their business plan for an area, and sometimes dollar for dollar match doesn't make sense. And you know, even with that match, they can't make the business case work. So we have permission from the South Carolina General Assembly and House Bill 4408 to define or to modify the match requirements. We don't have to do dollar for dollar. So in some cases, if the business case needs it, we're allowing the providers to tell us how much match they need to connect an area. And that's really, really important. So here's the eligibility map that we have. All of the March 31st data leads to a map that looks like this. And, you know, the coaching that we've shared with the ISPs is think back to your days of playing Pac-Man, where, you know, you drive your little icon around the screen and you gobble up cherries and you score points that way. Think of it kind of the same way. What we're encouraging the internet service providers to do is to put a lasso around, especially these dark red areas. These dark red areas on the map are the unserved priority locations. They meet one or more of the conditions, either a lot of students, difficult development area, or no internet service provider. Those dark red areas are the places where the grant applicants will score the most points by solving. And the pink areas are equally important. You know, these are unserved areas as well, but they don't get that priority criteria. So what we're asking the ISP to do is, you know, draw a service area around this, build as much as you can, and score as many points as you can along the way. You can see the yellow areas are places where I'll come back to that in a minute, but we've already put money, these are already funded, so we're not going to overbuild stuff that we've already funded. One of the things, I'm not going to spend a lot of time on this, but you know, when you publish broadband maps, we know that they're wrong the day that we put them out there. And that's because it takes a while to process the data and there's work that's going on all the time. So we're currently working through map challenges. These are places where the ISPs tell us our map is wrong and they can document accurately that there's already internet service there. So, you know, with an eye to not duplicating investments, we want to be really good at taking challenges and looking for errata in our maps. And so the map challenge process is designed to look backwards and correct the maps for errors. The funded project register is a different tool, but it's designed to, let's for example, say an ISP already has a project underway and they're using all of their own money. They don't need a penny of us. What they're concerned about is they don't want us to blow up their project by putting state money on top of that. So we've designed a funded project register to allow an ISP to communicate with us going forward. So projects that they know will be constructed from July 1, 2022 to June 30, 2023, they're allowed to tell us that detail and we will try to avoid blowing up those things. So who are the eligible applicants for our grant money? This is very important. They must be internet service providers. So we are not allowed to award money to a county, to any kind of municipal government. We are only allowed to award money to internet service providers. And they must be ISPs that offer residential service. They must have previously filed FCC Form 477. That's our indication that they're an experienced ISP. They most offer affordable high-speed internet plan. They have to define affordability for themselves. That's not our place to do it. But we are looking very carefully at the grant applications to make sure they offer affordable service. And they have to be this is a requirement from the American Rescue Plan Act. We're not making this stuff up. This is a regulation of ARPA where each ISP has to be eligible and participating in, at the time they make their grant application, the Affordable Connectivity Program. So the Federal Communications Commission actually reviews all those applications and says you're in or you're out to each ISP. So that's a checkbox they have to fill out on our form. So the eligible projects, again, repeating what I just said, they have to have at least one high priority census block of K-12 students. They must commit to serving 80% of the homes within a census block. And they have to utilize technology that meets or exceeds 100/100. That's 100 megabits per second down, 100 megabits per second up, the upload speed. And they have to provide, if they can't do that, they have to provide documentation that it is scalable from 120. And they must not overbuild anything that's existing 25/3. Scoring criteria, they get points for serving a high priority area, total housing units, availability, the type of technology that they're using, the geography that they're going into, the average cost per structure. So the more cost effectively they deliver service, the better. For those of you, we're looking very, very carefully as these grant applications come in at the applicant's ability to express a relationship with community government, with the local municipality. So Association of Counties, Municipal Association, we're looking very carefully at articulation of relationship between the ISP and the local government. So we're looking for letters of support, nonprofit letters of support, letters from the sheriff. We don't want to just put technology in for the sake of technology. We want to make sure that the accurate communication and a lot of communications going on with local government. And then we are very carefully looking at broadband service provider experience as well. We don't want to fund an ISP that's not capable of getting the job done and surviving over the long haul.
Jim.
Yes, sir.
And I applaud you for the collaboration with local government. And I know that the process is already open, but I really think there should be, and maybe this can be something going forward, engagement with the community somehow.
Yeah.
Local government is important, yes, but local government misspoke too. So I'm really concerned that the way that the broadband infrastructure makes it into the community is in a way that the community can access. And that oftentimes requires community input. So I put that out there.
We are in total agreement, Bernie, with your exact assessment. But also we are required to open up a competitive grant program. So we put out a map. The ISPs have to compete against that map. So that's our job as state government. And we have put narrative sections in their grant application where they have to articulate their relationship with the community. And we're hopeful that it's very thoughtful and involves nonprofit participation as well as municipal participation. And this is where we want to work together to try to get that relationship established. So yes, it's definitely places we can go. And then I see a couple of hands raised, Lisa, and then Nanette.
Yeah, so I apologize, but there's a lot of different pots of money, so I just want to make sure I understand which ones we're talking about. The funding that's available now that we're talking about, is this not available to anchor institutions? I noticed that you just said it was ISPs.
It's yes. Lisa, the dollars we're talking about are exclusive to internet service providers. These are infrastructure dollars.
But these are not BEAD then, okay.
No, well, BEAD, this is not BEAD money. This is ARPA money.
Yeah.
BEAD money probably won't be available until late in 2023, best case. and we have to apply for all of that stuff. We're talking.
I thought the deadline for that was this July.
No, they've posted eligibility for applications, but it's the money, the dollars themselves won't be available until late 2023, 2024. We'll talk about that later in the meeting.
Okay. All right, thanks, sorry. So many different pots.
I know. Nanette?
What I was going to suggest is if we could take something, if Bernie would have some availability, I would be interested, for this, I mean, it's 180 million. It's for high priority areas. It is infrastructure. It's access. It's not adoption. But if we could have some time with Bernie, we might be able to engage the ISPs before the applications even come in. I mean, they've got a 60-day period to put their applications together. And I know we've already done one webinar for the ISPs, but we could set up another webinar where we kind of go through the scoring criteria, and we could give some elaboration to maybe some ideas that we could work out with Bernie in terms of that, where the ISPs are working with the local communities in such a way to make their applications more robust and frankly more competitive amongst the different ISPs. That would be one approach. There might be other approaches. For Lisa, the thing I was going to mention to her is the BEAD there was a letter of intent that was due July 18th, but there will be some dollars under the IIJA, both digital equity and there's the BEAD side. So I think there may be an opportunity, and we may want to have a conversation with Lisa offline and go into more detail about that if she would be interested.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Thank you.
And I would welcome, Nanette, thank you. I would welcome the opportunity with a webinar with the ISPs, and Jim knows, of course, my proclivity about making sure we engage the community. And so, yeah, if we can work that out, that'd be great.
Well, Bernie, I think honestly, that's a great way to use the Broadband Advisory Council. We can set up a webinar with the intent on establishing relationship between the ISPs and the nonprofits. And I think that would be very well received, and probably doing that sometime this month, Bernie, would be the best time to do it, because they're going to be working hard on their applications. So the more relationships and bridges we build now would be great.
And we might want to include Madeline on that with
Yep.
Together SC, because of course we have a cadre of nonprofits, and of course Together SC does as well. So
Sure.
I think
It was
both
so
of us.
funny. Right before Nanette spoke, I had just texted Bernie to say, think we should offer to do a joint webinar on this? The thing I like about this idea, Jim, is that if we can engage the nonprofits at this point, they can be thinking about the adoption plans. I know there's no money in this for adoption, but if they have a sense of the scheduling and programming, they may be able to go to other sources for adoption money.
Yep.
So I'd be delighted to do that. And the question I would have is, should we do it statewide, or should we target certain counties, those ones that you're focusing on?
Well, due to the time constraints, I would say we open it up to all audiences and then encourage breakout sessions.
Mm-hmm.
I think we tried to build as many partnerships, Madeline. A lot of the ISPs are regional in nature. Some ISPs only, for example, serve Horry County, or they only serve Beaufort, Hilton Head area. So we need to build some regional bridges to have them make sense. But great takeaway. We'll do that as a follow-up item. I think that's a great idea. So let me keep going, because I know we got a lot of content to cover. Be very quick on dates. Just kind of the wave caps here. For the priority grant program, we opened on June 30. They close on August 31st. We expect to have funding agreements sent out to the companies And you'll notice that the construction, we're allowing an 18 to 24-month time window. So as these projects come in, once we fund them, I think you all know, it takes about 2 years to build them. So that's the big thing with broadband. The investment has to come first, and then it takes time to build it. So, you know, there's a lot of time in here, Madeline, back to your point of getting the nonprofits engaged. We have time, we can be thoughtful, and we can make all that stuff happen. Signing up for notifications, just so you all are aware, this is open to the general public. On the ors.sc.gov broadband website, there's a drop-down menu, and you can sign up for broadband grant notifications. This is open to any member of the public that is interested, including all of you. And we also have a button here as the pathway for the grant documents. So all of the grant docs are out there, and you all are free to take a look, and we'll do the best we can facilitate that as well. So now I'm going to switch gears to the Capital Projects Fund. And I want to come back to the slide Nanette kicked us off with. Hopefully some of this stuff is beginning to make sense. So the House Bill 4408, which Governor McMaster enacted on May 13th, there are two pots of money. There's State Fiscal Recovery Fund, which is $214.2 million, and there's a Capital Projects Fund, which is $185.8. The formula determined the amount of money, so this is not competitive. We know that the state of South Carolina is going to get $185.8 million, but we have to come up with a plan that Treasury approves. That's the big deal. So the plan is due by September 22nd, and that's why we sent out to all of you the our idea for the Capital Projects Fund is using the next greatest thing, our Main Street approach to become our plan for the Capital Projects Fund. So I put a couple of bullet points up here, but what I would love, if I know you all aren't bashful, but since we sent you some pre-reading, I wonder what your thoughts are. Do you like this idea?
You mean comments on the whole plan?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And
Well,
go on, Bernie.
Well, of course, I'm going to be a broken record here. So on page 7, under selection criteria, again, I'm really interested. You have, local government support, but again, I think somehow we need to be intentional in talking about how we will engage the community, the actual consumer. So that's one area that I think that should be highlighted. Of course, you referenced the Broadband Community Champion training, which is awesome, and I don't know if there's any way to extend that in this plan or talk about that in this plan. But those are the areas that of course, I was interested in.
Yeah, and Bernie, your points are well taken. And this, we have not drafted the grant documents yet for this program. This is to lay out a conceptual approach, and it's a community-based approach, right? Let me make sure everybody understands we used our March 31 map set, and what I will say right at the top is don't get lost in the eligible, the appendix, which had the list of main streets or Main Street communities that we look at. All of that work's going to have to be redone later in the year. But what we tried to do is illustrate the way that we would pick communities. First of all, we're not allowed to go to a place that's already served. I think everybody knows that. So we've got, if there's a main street that already has service and more than 50% of the residents have connectivity, we're not allowed to go there. So, but the idea is to have a community-based approach instead of just 5 or 6 homes here and there, to have a holistic approach of businesses and really attacking the Main Street commercial districts that have been left behind in some cases, as well as the homes, and try to have a comprehensive community-based impact. And I think, Bernie, this tees itself up perfectly for what you're talking about. You know, it's an all-in business plus resident type of approach. Do you like, Bernie, let me ask you, do you like conceptually where this is headed? That's really what I was getting at. What are your thoughts conceptually? Are we moving the right direction?
I mean, I think so. Yeah, I think because you set it up perfectly as far as, you know, the next greatest thing when we talk about the electrification, it's the same parallel. That we've got to do the same thing for broadband access. And so you set it up very well in that context. And my, you know, again, my whole thing is let's try to push it down to as close to the community as possible, and have the community bought into, because even if we use rural electrification as any experience, and I'm old enough to remember some areas of South Carolina that didn't have electricity for a while. So y'all laugh, I am that old. So we've got to think about that, use that as our history lesson, and try to push down as close to the ground the process of getting internet access to folk in the community, and the businesses especially. Yes.
Mm-hmm.
So Ben, it's Madeline. I mean, Jim, it's Madeline. I know you said this list on the back is not final, but I would suggest that if this concept is to create a commercial hub, that you make sure there's enough existing commercial building fabric.
Mhm.
Some of these downtowns are so small that they may not have the ability to become a commercial center without significant construction. And whether that makes it viable or not, I don't know. You know, I'm thinking about like McClellanville is on here is one I see, and they have maybe 10 commercial buildings.
Okay.
You know, and so I think that concept of what's the other infrastructure,
Yeah.
and what that means about how much of a commercial focus there is, as perhaps other focuses like residential or you know, our artistic centers or something else that might be more appropriate at a smaller scale community.
Yep. Madeline, that's a great point. And we will definitely look for the BBAC, the Broadband Advisory Council, to provide input on the set of communities when we have eligibility. I just want to make sure everybody knows, you know, you have to think about this. We're not going to have the money for the Capital Projects Fund probably until January of 2023. That's why I say the list is not final, Bernie, because we will have to use our next map round, our September maps, to draw the eligibility. And we also have other programs, grant programs that are going on right now. So some of these communities will be completely served by the time we go through the cycle. The net.
So Jim,
Oh, I'm sorry, Madeline, I just wanted to echo your concerns. One of the things about this concept is, you know, I call it the bridge to nowhere. What we very much are concerned, I mean, this is a good concept project, but one of the concerns is making sure that there is, I liked how you phrase it, not enough commercial fabric. That is one of the concerns. So I know the Department of Commerce is on the BBAC. One of the things we are interested in as part of the overall BBAC and the members that are on here is, you know, are there areas that we need to maybe focus on that would be successful vis-a-vis those that might not be as successful? And then I would emphasize this particular concept, if we were to pursue it, does require, I think it has a lot of requirements on others, not just the ISP. Some of our other programs, it's really, we're working with the internet service provider to just get access done and just get the actual infrastructure out there. This one, this project, if it were to, this concept, if it were to move forward, it kind of wraps in that Main Street idea that Eric, the munis have. And Bernie, to your point about the grassroots, I mean, we would need to leverage relationships to make this approach, you know, as successful as to ensure the greatest amount of success. There is also a community anchor component to this that is an option under CPF. And I think, Jim, if you get a chance, you should reference that.
And Nanette, and just I really appreciate your comments about leveraging community relations and community partnerships, because since this concept or the final proposal is submitted in September, is that correct?
It's required to be done by then, Bernie, but we'd like to get it done much sooner.
Sure. So I'm just saying, and then the funds aren't going to be available until early 2023. I'm just saying use this time between now and then to build those relationships based on where you're seeing the need to invest resources using the Broadband Community Champion program and other ways of engaging those communities so you can leverage those local relationships.
Mm-hmm. Yep. And we have the overarching challenge again. We are required by federal law to have competitive grant programs. In other words, we can't tell a community that they're going to win the money. We have to open up a set of communities, and then the internet service providers have to apply for a set of communities. So we just have to be careful with that. You know, it's a delicate balance of things, but we definitely, you all are bringing up great comments, and we love the dialogue. How about anybody else?
So Jim, this is Kathy Schwarting.
Yeah.
And you and I have talked about this a little bit in the past, and I can tell from some of the excellent comments that have been made by Madeline and Bernie and others that we still have some planning to do. But overall, I think this is a great concept. I mean, for somebody that's worked in these rural, underserved communities for a long time, this could really be a game changer for a lot of those communities. So I think if we work out a lot of these details and make sure, I'm all about working with community organizations because we're one of them. And I think that will make the difference in a lot of these communities. But overall, I really like the idea of trying to implement and focus some of this funds in those underserved communities. So I just wanted to applaud y'all.
Thanks for that, Kathy. How about anybody else?
Jim, this is Eric Buds. I think the proposal is great. I do want to caution that some of the targeted communities have weaker leadership.
Eric, we may have lost you. You're get muted by chance. Eric, we lost. Bernie, can anybody hear me? Okay. Eric, I lost your audio. I captured, I think, the essence. You can tell me if I'm right or wrong, but you know, Madeline mentioned commercial fabric. I think human fabric is also important. You know, and this is where we can use the brain power of the BBAC. If we don't have enough human fabric on the ground to absorb a project like this, it will fail as well. So we need infrastructure, of course. We need all eligible homes, but we also need human boots on the ground to make it work. Did I hit the note that you were heading for?
Can you hear me now?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Yes. I was just saying the leadership in some of the communities is going to be weaker, and you know, there does need to be an effort up front to gain their support as well as the rest of the communities.
Yep. And we'll look for your guidance, but again, we can't promise a community that they're going to get money in advance. We have to open it up as a competitive grant round. ISPs have to apply. So the job of the BBAC will be to come up with the list where we know there's good human talent available, as well as, you know, Madeline's point of commercial fabric to make sense for a list of communities that we'd spend a lot of time and energy and effort on and dollars. Thank you for that comment. Anybody else?
This is Kathy again. I wonder if it would be beneficial, because September will be here before you know it, if maybe your group puts together a smaller work group that could help with some of these concerns that have been brought up.
Yep.
Just a thought. I know how difficult it is to get this entire group together, but maybe some of those suggestions could be incorporated into just a smaller group that could work together a little bit closer and quicker
Sure.
to try to get some of that. I mean, just a thought.
No, that's a great thought. And so let me kind of package this up a little differently. So we're required to put together a proposal to U.S. Treasury, and it's really a directional proposal to Treasury that they like. So more of a concept document. After that's done and approved, we're going to have a huge lift to actually create the grant application itself and the grant documents and the grant agreements and all the terms and conditions, all that kind of stuff. And Bernie, that's where we would bake in, you know, the application form itself. That's where we would bake in the narrative for community engagement and all those kind of things. So there's a lot of work to be done beyond the initial conceptual approval from Treasury. Kathy, also to your point, we can't select the next list of communities until after the next round of maps. And we really need to get through our grant awards. So it'll be later in the year before we have the list of communities. But we'd love to have your guidance. And I'll make this point, and we've got some other things we need to cover, but you all feel free to shoot me a note. I'll share it around. Any kind of comments at all. These, you know, as we've been very lucky to have $400 million for broadband, but I want to make sure everybody knows the same House Bill 4408 also allocated $900 million of ARPA money for water and sewer. And it also allocated $453 million for roads. So there's a national best practice called Dig Once. And again, that's reflected into the plan that we could, if we play our cards right and the engineers work together, we could completely rebuild a community. We could fix the water, we could put in the infrastructure for broadband, and we could repave some of the roads at the same time if the stars line up. So there's a big opportunity here to be really smart for South Carolina, and we'd certainly like to do that. One thing I didn't, you know, Nanette brought this up a little bit earlier. The Capital Projects Fund dollars have some flexibility. There's broadband infrastructure dollars. There's also some flexibility for dollars to be used to invest in a community anchor institution. So the way we've reflected it currently is all the dollars for broadband, but we could spread that around a little bit if, especially if this group likes that idea, we can look at the budget. But I'm going to leave it at that for that. But please feel free to shoot your comments.
Jim, can I ask one more since we're talking about the whole concept? I saw it here, the budget, and I'm seeing $5,000 for community engagement for the 2 years. Do you think that's enough? We're really going to do serious community engagement. I just ask you to look at that.
Okay. Yeah, there's lots of other dollars, Bernie. These are infrastructure only dollars.
Okay.
So we'll look at the other things, but yeah, your point's well taken. Quick recap, the Rural Broadband Grant Program is our partnership with Department of Commerce, and this money became available in January of 2021. The yellow areas on the planning map are really the places that we've invested those dollars, and that work is currently underway. So I just want to give you all a recap on this very quickly. The Rural Broadband Grant Program, there's 17 internet service providers in 18 counties. And we had one internet service provider recently step away. So this reflects 17 instead of 18. $30 million of state money. As of March 31st, we have successfully built 776.1 miles of fiber. We've created access for over 5,000 homes. Of the 34 projects, you can see the percent complete. 3 of the projects were relinquished. Unfortunately, just this one ISP was struggling to make some things happen. But this will be updated once a quarter. We provide detailed update for South Carolina Department of Commerce. So that is forthcoming at the end of July. But over $26 million has been invested, and construction is required to be done by October 31st. That's kind of the big takeaway. Is the Rural Broadband Grant Program is nearing completion. So in the next 90 days, probably near the point in time we have our next meeting, a lot of these projects will be wrapped up, and those yellow areas will be turning green on the map, which is very cool. Okay, I want to stop my presentation and make sure we allow some time. We have a guest speaker. Jason, is Jason out there?
Yes, can you see me on the screen and can you hear me?
I can hear you just fine.
Okay, super. I will give more of a verbal presentation and I'll kind of follow your lead.
Okay.
Several months ago, Dorchester County was awarded $31.5 million more or less in ARPA funding. And one of our priorities was to really try to address broadband in our county. So we put out a request for proposals, and ultimately we had multiple respondents, but we settled in on 2 respondents that we felt would have the highest impact. Those are PRTC and Home Telecom. So we are leveraging what started as $10 million is now down to $8.5 million, where we're leveraging dollar to dollar, basically $17.1 million. 8.5 in ARPA funding, 8.5 in private investment with those 2 companies for us to serve 4,100 homes and 325 miles with new buried fiber. And we identified several underserved communities. For people like Bernie, who grew up in Dorchester County, some of these communities may sound familiar. Got some very interesting names like Cowtel, 64 miles, 528 homes, and the estimated completion of that is the third quarter of 2023. Reevesville and Shady Grove, another one of our communities, 2 communities right off of I-95 near St. George, and they're putting in 60 miles, 828 homes, first quarter of 2023. Indian Field, 12 miles. And again, we have the completion at third quarter 2023. And then some of the communities that are a little bit further out, Rosinville, we're putting in 27 miles, 810 homes, approximate completion. That's later in 2024. Those are just some of the examples of communities that we're working in. We're working in both school districts. We have 2 school districts in Dorchester County, Dorchester School District 2, which is our larger, more suburban school district, as well as Dorchester 4, which is our more rural school district. And what we found is during the pandemic, we became painfully aware of the communities that really lack broadband service. You were talking about the Main Street program earlier. One of the things that we found to be very helpful is when we put in our library in St. George, now 10 years ago, we noticed that after the library closed, people were gathering in the parking lot. And the reason why they were gathering in the parking lot is so they could access internet service. And so the Wi-Fi service from the library, that kind of became its own Wi-Fi hotspot. Same thing happened when we put in the Quick Job Center. Working with Trident Technical College, we found the same phenomenon. And so one of the things we've done more recently in partnering with PRTC and Home Telecom is, as we open our new parks, Davis Bailey Park in St. George that's been open for just over a year, and then the Ashley River Park that we opened back in March, we have free Wi-Fi at those locations. So I think that as we talk about strategies, and you've kind of got these safe public places that people feel safe gathering, as much as it's important, I think, to have Main Street with broadband service and potential free Wi-Fi, if that's possible. I think having some of these other areas where people gather is another great opportunity, which is kind of an interim step, but also a very attractive way to get people the service until we can run broadband to their particular locations. And I know that was accomplished, again, during the pandemic with buses that were being placed in different communities. But I think that's another opportunity as an interim step for us to move forward. We have really been successful so far. We're giving updates. We took advantage of the information that ORS had, and we set up our website. So we've got a map showing the areas to be served. When we heard the presentation at the Association of the Counties, I guess that was the mid-year meeting several months ago, we became more aware of the I Need Internet survey. So that's a part of our website, another way to gather information. We put together our timeline, and we've included that information on our website. And we've also shared our requests for proposals with several counties and communities.
Jason, if I can jump in, I just wanted to
Anna, you just muted yourself.
I just wanted to say how much we appreciate Jason and Dorchester County Council's leadership in this area. They have by far stepped out and made broadband an important, made an important commitment to broadband. And so we definitely applaud Dorchester's efforts. Thank you, Jason.
Absolutely. And I do see hands raised. Ray Sharp, your hand is still raised. Is that still active?
Yes. I had a quick question just to clear my mind on on the maps. The one you referenced, Pac-Man, which I loved. It's red and pink. So, and both of them are unserved. The reason why red is priority is because it's more highly populated. Is that correct?
It meets, Ray, it meets one of those three criteria. So
Okay.
the red ones meet, they either have a lot of students, they have difficult development area, or there's no ISP. So one of those three conditions. Some of them have both.
Thank you for clarifying that. I appreciate it.
And then Eric Buds, I still see your hand raised. Is that still active?
Yeah, I should have removed it.
Okay, no problem. Bernie? Yes, sir.
As a resident of Dorchester County, I just want to lift up, it was mentioned earlier about leadership at the community and the county level. Dorchester County has the best leadership in Jason Ward and County Council in the state, and I live here. So just wanted to put that shout out there.
Administrator Ward, we are very grateful that you joined us today, and very happy that you shared as much as you did with this whole group. So we love it. And Anna, thanks for your leadership on working with all the counties you know, that's a principal way that we're going to solve this broadband issue statewide is doing this the right way. And of course, with the municipal association as well, the counties and municipalities doing all this stuff together, we're going to make a big difference. So let me go back. Are any further comments for Administrator Ward or questions from anybody?
Jim, if I could add, one of the things that we found to be very important is the principles that you outlined earlier. When we looked at the areas that had the most population, and the areas that had the greatest number of students, those were areas that we prioritized in terms of having the providers serve. And it's a kind of unique situation in Dorchester County because we do have a part of our county that's very suburban coming out of Charleston, North Charleston. But we have those very principally rural areas like St. George and many of the communities that I named that, but for the funding, would not receive an internet service provider's attention. So we thought this was a very unique way to address those critical needs.
Fantastic. Well, we really applaud the work that you've done so much on, for sure. Going back, can everybody see the slides again? Just making sure I got them popped up. Cool. I will, you know, we had some good ideas about having a smaller group to work on capital projects fund. How about this as an idea? If you would type into the chat your name, and we'll reflect that in, and we'll come up with a list, kind of a smaller working group around the capital projects fund Main Street idea. We'll use that as an efficient way, or you can just shoot me an email. But we'll be lowering the blades on that, assuming, you know, you all like this concept. We'll add more marination to it over time and get it played out. So again, thank you so much, Mr. Ward, for joining us. And we would love to share our Main Street idea with your expert eyes as well, and see if you like this plan. We'd welcome your support too. We do plan, once we've captured the feedback from the BBAC, we're going to open up to the general public for comment, and we're going to try to, you know, capture many ideas as we can from as many different places as possible. All right, moving into some other business and just keeping an eyeball on time. We've got about 15 minutes left. Thought we'd have a little bit of topics to go through. We started talking. I know this gets really confusing because there's a lot of money. But President Biden on November 15th signed it's called the Infrastructure Investments and Jobs Act. You hear us talking about IIJA. So that became law on November 15th of 2021. Within that larger law, there's a $65 billion allocation for broadband, and it's broken up into 3 federal agencies. I'm going to start first with the FCC, the Federal Communications Commission. We mentioned earlier they have the Affordable Connectivity Program. This provides the $30 subsidy to residential homes. So the Federal Communications Commission got $14.2 billion to extend the EBB program. U.S. Department of Agriculture got $2 billion to extend and do another grant round for the USDA Reconnect program. Some of you are familiar with that. So once those dollars come out, that leaves really this large entity called NTIA. It's actually part of U.S. Department of Commerce, is getting $48 billion for broadband. It's a monster amount of money, and it's divided up into 4 different programs. And Lisa, we got talking about this earlier, and there's a lot of dates bouncing around. So let me see if I can do the best I can to step you through it at a high level. I'm going to start first with middle mile. There's $1 billion. Again, this is nationally competitive money for middle mile infrastructure. That's typically, think of that as fiber that goes from community A to community B. They're not necessarily connecting a lot of homes, but it's critical infrastructure in between communities, especially out west. There are some in Alaska. You all can imagine the need for, you know, point A to point B connectivity, and without doing that, you can't do what you need to do at the household level. So that's what middle mile is about. Tribal, we actually had a nice victory in the tribal area. It's not led by Office of Regulatory Staff, but our friends at the Catawba Indian Reservation in Rock Hill. In fact, it was on trying to think, June 24th, they got awarded a little over $900,000 to go to Rock Hill community, the Catawba Indian Reservation, for some digital equity stuff. That was a big victory for South Carolina. Again, we can't take any credit for it, but part of that money is beginning to flow. I'm going to talk first about the BEAD program. So BEAD is the infrastructure dollars, and the digital equity program is for all the stuff, the adoption and inclusion. I will say that state agencies are working together and collaborating. The ORS, Office of Regulatory Staff, is taking the lead role. We were required to put in a letter of intent, and Governor McMaster had to sign a letter of intent, and we did so earlier this month. We got it officially filed. It was due in by July 18th. So the BEAD letter of intent was placed. Governor McMaster did designate Office of Regulatory Staff. So we will be handling the infrastructure dollars. I'm going to save this for a later day. A different state agency. We'll save that announcement. That's being worked. This grant application is actually due tonight by midnight. And I don't want to get the cart ahead of the horse. We'll have some announcements on this. I think it's safe to say that South Carolina will be participating, but it will not be flowing through Office of Regulatory Staff. So I'm going to leave that at that right now. Talking a little bit more about the BEAD program. The BEAD program, we do have to apply for that. There's no immediate dollars. Every state is guaranteed to get $100 million as part of infrastructure, but we have to apply for it. There's a planning grant program that's we have to apply for those funds. So the keynote for all of you is there's a lot of planning that has to go in before any dollars flow from BEAD. Also, this is articulated. The BEAD program requires the deployment of the new Federal Communications Commission maps. So the FCC is changing their whole mapping methodology, and there's a lot of moving parts. And so from our perspective, the BEAD money is not currently available. We don't think any dollars from that are going to be available until the end of next year, early part of 2024. So for right now, for the foreseeable future, we're focused on ARPA dollars, getting that out as accurately as possible. And then the BEAD will be on the heels of that and flowing. And then you all will hear about the digital equity at a later date. So that'll be kind of a fun update at our next meeting, I would say, is sharing details of how the state of South Carolina will be pursuing that. I'll ask if Nanette's still on. Is there anything further we should talk about there?
I don't have anything, Jim,
Okay.
to add. We might check and see if anybody has any questions.
Any questions on IIJA?
I have a question. It's Lisa.
Yes.
Can we get a copy of the letter of intent that was signed by the governor?
For BEAD?
Yes.
Sure.
Okay. Thank you.
And then any other questions on this before I move on? Okay, got one more kind of a fun slide. Is Betsy Carpenter out here?
I'm here.
Awesome. So I put together a couple of slides, and let me start by saying this was a fun little collaboration we did, a relatively small pilot project, but why don't you kick this off, Betsy, and set the stage?
So this is a different version of the last mile. It's not the donuts. There's just not a whole lot out there in the last mile to get to these little houses down the road in the country. If you look on Google Maps, some of these houses, you don't even see the house. You just kind of wonder where it is. It looks like a blank field out in the middle of the road. But we identified rural school districts, and I guess we have one in Greenville, and then we asked them to nominate families that they knew just didn't have internet. And we're testing out this Starlink low orbit satellite to see whether or not this would be a way to deal with the houses that are just too far from any lines. And Jim has a great installer who went out and got these all put up, and so far so good. Everybody seems to be very happy with it.
Thanks, Betsy. And so we listed out the 7 school districts that we impacted. And at the statistics on the bottom, one of the first things people ask about Starlink is, does it work? And so I did the statistics last night across the 20 homes. So we, the normal Starlink install is a do-it-yourself install. And we, Cedric and I, one of our team members, we went out personally on site. I can tell you, none of the residents we met with would have had the capability to install it on their own. So the fact that we had a professional installer was really a beautiful thing. So South Carolina Department of Ed paid for the Angel subscription, and the South Carolina Office of Regulatory Staff, our agency, paid for the installation. We got them all up and running on June 29th. And the protocol was, once it was installed and put in place, our installer would actually run a speed test before he left the site. So I ran the statistics last night. You can see on average across the 20, we have 120 meg download speed, 10 meg upload speed across those 20 installs, 53.5 milliseconds of ping, which is great response time. It's not as good as fiber, of course, but it's still way, way better than kind of the old school satellite. And jitter is another measure that it's kind of the consistency of the connection that Ookla measures. So we're very happy with the statistics, and I thought you all would like to see, these are the installs. The very first one was done in a log cabin in the middle of the woods. And here's what that finished install looks like. We've actually, or the installer placed a permanent mount on a pole in the side yard, so it would be similar to a direct TV that you may have seen set up. What's interesting also about the Starlink setup is that this device actually rotates to track the satellite as it goes through orbit. So it's pretty neat. It'll slide. It's not stationary. But you can see here, there's a trailer. I'm obviously not showing addresses, but you can see this was on a trailer setup. This was a very rural home in the middle of the low country. I think this was in Bamberg County, down the road. So all of these are remote rural homes, but all of them had at least one school student and usually a student and a staff member of South Carolina Department of Ed. So we made a big difference. I know in one of these cases, we actually connected the superintendent of the school district because she did not have internet at home. So this was a really cool project. We're continuing to monitor it. And we think that there may be a place for Starlink to handle. We do have some 600-acre farms, which are very difficult to reach. And in some cases, I think you all agree, it's just more efficient to put up Starlink and get it done if we can work out a deal that makes some sense. But I know you've all read a lot about it. Any questions on Starlink? And well, hearing none, that was really our last slide for the day. We're landing a few minutes early. I will turn off sharing and just kind of open it up for any kind of comments that anybody might have, or any things we missed along the way. Everybody's worn out. Well, I will say we are all incredibly grateful for your time on this call, participating, working with us. I'm incredibly grateful for the team here at ORS. The last 6 weeks have been incredibly, from the time the governor and the General Assembly said go, I think Mike can agree with me on this. It's been a whirlwind, and everybody here trying to get the grant program launch was a big deal. But we're grateful for all your support. We want to make the money move quickly and accurately, and do all those things right. But as we dig in, Bernie will count on you to keep us straight and all of you working those community relationships along the way. Anything else for anybody?
Hey, Jim, it's Lisa. I know I've had a lot of questions about money and anchor institutions, so I appreciate you taking those. But I also wanted to just say that your team and ORS has done a fantastic job. I can't imagine taking this on and turning around what you all have done in such a short amount of time. So thank you very, very much.
Thank you for the support. Let's just cover the topic of our next meeting. There's a lot of moving parts between now and October. So we currently have it set up for October 12th, I believe, is our next meeting. Am I right on that, Anna?
Says the 11th on the agenda.
Oh, it's the
October
11th. I may have had the date wrong in my head. But there might be a need to get together between now and then. Would anybody be favorable to that? Would you all be open to that? I think we're going to have I think suffice to say, there'll be some digital equity announcements we'll have. We'll probably have a need to get together on the capital projects fund again. Our Main Street plan to sync that up. So if you all would entertain a meeting between, we'll keep October 12th on there, but we'll need something in between. And Anna, how about if I work with you and we'll pick out a date and find another one we can put on everybody's calendar.
Sounds good.
Well, thanks everybody. Got a lot to do, but we're grateful for all your help.
Jim, do you want Bernie and I to stay on the call to talk about doing that webinar call?
We can.
Everyone gets off.
Yeah, or anybody who would like to stay on a couple extra minutes, we can have a quick chat about that. I will turn the recording off. That's okay, Hank?